As the Paint by Numbers system guide states on page 1, it's a living document with changes coming from questions, bugs, and requests from the community, as well as changes to Novel Crafter. Unfortunately, without an import feature, all those changes need to be made manually. This video covers the process of upgrading to the latest version and provides a suggestion to make upgrading less painful in the future. Major releases will be mentioned on the Discord thread, but minor releases, like going from A to B to C, are to fix typos and often aren't announced on Discord. The easiest way to learn what has changed in a release is to read the changelog, which can be found early on in the guide. You can visually identify the changes in the guide because they are highlighted in cyan, so you can decide whether to copy and paste the entire prompt or only make single word changes. As the PBI guide has grown and improved, a major flaw has become obvious. The trouble is that much like the original Star Trek episode, the novel template you have created is a tribble that will replicate out of control every time you use it. Let's say you started using PBN version 2.1. You have an idea for a trilogy, so created 3 new novel projects. You now have 4 copies of all 240 plus prompts. Version 2.2 comes out and we'll say Planning 102 has some changes, so you update your template and the 3 novels. You repeat this process for every change prompt. In the interim, you come up with 2 more story ideas, bringing your total to 5 novel projects. In December, we're gifted with significant improvements and new features in Novel Crafter, which spawn changes to the PBN, so version 2.3 comes out. Every update in version 2.3 has to be copied into Novel Crafter 6 times. If this continues, we're all going to be overrun by tribbles. The solution I've started using for now is to split the PBN guide into 2 components. The novel template is stripped down to the codex entries in the story notes category and the placeholders and characters, locations, lore, and others. The second component is a novel project that holds the planning to references codex entries with a twist. The codex entries belong to the series rather than the book. To make this change, you have to click on each codex entry and select Move to Series. The story template component of the Paint by Numbers system will consist of basically 54 prompts. So you still want to keep the story notes because those are local to each novel, and there's 38 of those. Your characters, you have the character stubs, location stubs, subplots, and then other. And then if we create a new novel with that template, create novel. So as expected, we have our 54 codex entries, but if we then move it to where the prompt repository is, in this case it's under the series called number 1 Write, reload, and now what you see is it added 268 series codex prompts. And the way that works is you need to have your codex category set up with the keywords and then what type they are configured so that when you move the novel into a series that has your prompt repository, it knows where to put them. If we were to go in here, say lore sci-fi, if I deleted that category, then what happens is when we scroll down to the regular lore, all those entries get moved to there because they were lore type. And most of your prompts, if you don't have these categories set up, will end up going to others. And now we can see that they're back in lore sci-fi. If I were to use the export function to make a backup of this story project currently, it would bring in all 268 of those series prompts. So if I want a clean export that's just the codex entries for this story, I would move it to a series like this one I set up to export that doesn't have a prompt repository in it. And now you can see it's just the book codex entry. So I'd export it and then probably move it back into the right series. If you have an existing novel that you want to convert over to this new setup for the Paint by Numbers system, like I have this idea story that I want to convert from an old form of the Paint by Numbers system, you have to go in, select each individual codex entry, and then delete the entry. And currently there is an issue with the focus on these. Team's already aware of it, working on a solution. Well, let's say there was something in here like I'll create so I've got a codex entry that I want to move into the series. The way I can do that is two different ways. The first way would be to click on the three-dot menu and go move to series, and then that will make it available to all the other books within that series. What I do to make sure it ends up in the prompt repository is I will do a move to, and then send it to my prompt repository. Yes. If I open the prompt repository, go into planning, we'll see that planning 999 is there, but there's no highlight mentioning that it's a series codex entries. But if we click on move to series, now it will always say this entry is part of whatever series the prompt repository is in. And then we can either move it back to the novel, or in this case, as we don't need it, we'll just delete the entry. Let's go back to this project we want to convert into a story that works with the new setup. Again, we want to keep story notes, any of our characters, any lore, anything like that specific to the novel, but everything else that we know is going to be in our prompt repository. And then once it's all completely emptied out, you can move it into the series. Now, if we were to take and move this as it is, what happens is now we've got a doubling, in some cases, of, like in this case, I'd already deleted Planning 100, so the series shows up, but I hadn't deleted 101, so we have two 101, and notice there's no highlight, or now there's the highlight indicating it's part of the series. And when you have codex entries that are copies or have the same name as an entry in the series, when the AI goes out and references those, like you use it in chat or in Write, it's going to use what's in the series. The downsides to this new system is that you cannot pick and choose which categories of codices appear in your novel project. You get them all, and if you don't have categories and keywords configured properly, they get dumped into whatever codex category type the entry uses. Novels can only belong to one series at a time, so if you're writing a series, you would need to clone the repository and add the clone to that series. This means that you'll have to update all copies of the repository, but it is still less work than updating every novel project. If you have any questions, I highly recommend joining the Novel Crafter Discord. Thanks for watching and keep writing. Future readers are waiting for your stories.